In the captivating world of ancient Rome, marriage was a far cry from what we know today. Back then, marriage wasn't about love or finding someone special to share your life with. It felt less like falling in love and more like negotiating a business deal or forging a powerful alliance between families. Surprisingly, it was not only common but even expected for Roman husbands to be unfaithful. Affairs weren't concealed or considered shameful as they often are today. In fact, many men engaged in casual affairs with women known as courtesans or maintained long-term relationships with lovers outside of marriage. But that's not all. Roman men frequently engaged in romantic and sexual relationships with other men as well, and this was simply accepted as a normal part of everyday life. To truly grasp how the Romans viewed love and desire, we must set aside our modern notions of relationships and see the world through their eyes, where marriage, power, and pleasure intertwined, each shaping the fate of the other. In ancient Rome, people didn't define themselves with labels like gay, straight, or bisexual as we do today. They were more concerned with who held the power in the relationship than with who was actually part of it. In a traditional man-woman relationship, the man was often viewed as the dominant partner, the provider, while the woman was seen as the receiver. This wasn't just about the relationship. It was about revealing who truly held the power. When two men became involved, everything grew more complicated. One of them had to assume the receiver's role, a position the Romans regarded as more feminine and submissive. That position often carried a social stigma for adult men, but not always, especially if the younger partner was still a teenager. One well-known form of same-sex relationship was known as pedestry. In this setup, an older man named Arises forms a close bond with a teenage boy called Eromanos. But these relationships went beyond romance or intimacy. They often involved mentorship, guidance, and support in advancing within society. In those days, significant age gaps in relationships weren't considered surprising, particularly among the wealthy and influential. For the Roman elite, it was considered a customary rite of passage for young men, providing them with valuable connections and a gateway into the realms of politics and influence. Even among Rome's most powerful men, emperors, generals, and politicians, it was entirely commonplace to have lovers of both sexes. What's surprising is that back then, this wasn't considered cheating, not in the way we understand it today. In those days, there were no methods of birth control, and childbirth was among the most perilous experiences a woman could face. In ancient times, when a man engaged in affairs outside his marriage, particularly with other men, it was sometimes viewed as a way to protect his wife, a peculiar yet practical form of birth control. In same-sex relationships, the individual with greater power, such as an emperor, was typically expected to assume the dominant, masculine role. This display highlighted his strength and commanding presence. Roman society didn't always abide by its own rules. Even the most powerful men sometimes defied these expectations. Believe it or not, Julius Caesar, one of Rome's most renowned leaders, was rumored to prefer a more submissive role in his same-sex relationships. This event stunned many, leaving Romans whispering in confusion. It clashed with their image of a strong, commanding ruler, fueling rumors and uncertainty throughout the city. Emperor Hadrian was unlike most Roman rulers. Though he was married, primarily for political advantage, he showed little genuine romantic interest in his wife. In fact, many historians believe they never had a physical relationship at all. This idea stems from the fact that both Hadrian and his wife had numerous lovers, with Hadrian devoting most of his attention to men. One young man in particular stood out, a strikingly handsome and intelligent teenager named Antinous. Hadrian adored him. He ensured Antinous received an exceptional education, and together they journeyed across the empire. But their close bond ended in tragedy. During their time in Egypt, Antinous met a mysterious fate, drowning in the depths of the Nile River. Heartbroken, Hadrian took extreme steps to honor him. He built an entire city near the place where Antoninus died and named it after him. He even had Antinus's body mummified and brought back to Rome. Hadrian went so far as to have coins minted bearing Antinus's likeness and proclaimed him a god, an honor of extraordinary rarity. The worship of Antinus soon spread throughout the empire. Now, Hadrian wasn't the only emperor with unconventional romances. Emperor Nero, too, engaged in relationships with men. Yet his actions were so scandalous, they astonished even the Romans. Most emperors selected their lovers from among the palace slaves, continuing to treat them as mere servants. Nero, however, broke with tradition. He held elaborate wedding ceremonies, elevating his chosen partners far above the status of servitude. In one instance, he married a former slave named Pythagoras. Remarkably, Nero assumed the role of the bride, donning a veil and all, while Pythagoras stood as the groom. This confused the public, as Emperor Nero was expected to assume the dominant, traditionally masculine role. Later, Nero married another young male slave named Sporus. This time, to appease the Roman people, he assumed the masculine role himself, demonstrating how even emperors were compelled to balance their personal desires with the demands of public opinion. However, some of Emperor Nero's actions would be deeply disturbing by today's standards. In one shocking case, to make sure the public saw him as the dominant masculine figure in his relationship with the boy Sporus, Nero had the boy castrated, a cruel act done purely for image and control. There are additional accounts of Nero treating his lovers with cruelty or abuse, though it's difficult to determine which stories are factual. The most shocking claim about Emperor Nero is the ancient assertion that he committed incest with his mother Agrena the Younger. This allegation is found chiefly in the works of the historian Suetonius, in The Lives of the Caesars, and more cautiously, in Tacitus's Annals. Both sources suggest that Agrippina initiated the relationship to retain her influence over Nero after he became emperor. While the incest allegation remains a notorious element of Nero's dark legend, credible historians almost universally dismiss it as a malicious fabrication. This accusation serves as a powerful example of how political enemies in ancient Rome wielded sexual slander, the most shocking of taboos, to ruin reputations after death. Nero's actions were extreme, yet another emperor, Tiberius, is remembered in an even darker light, particularly for the way he treated the young people in his care. Tiberius is frequently cited as one of the most notorious abusers of power in his relationships with his lovers. He had a strong interest in much younger boys, and the way he treated them has led many historians to call him one of the most sexually corrupt emperors in Roman history. Much of this unfolded away from public view. Tiberius spent his later years in opulent villas scattered across Mediterranean islands, most notably on the island of Capri. He officially brought boys in as servants, but numerous reports indicate they were also exploited to fulfill his sexual desires. Many stories about Tiberius are probably exaggerated. Roman historians often embellish their accounts with sensational details to cast their subjects in a more negative light. Even if only some of it is true, it reveals a troubling portrait of how absolute power could be exploited in the Roman Empire.